do you think most people, when presented with this analysis, so most people saying, okay, I have this visceral revulsion against kicking a baby, or I have this visceral revulsion against doing X. Do you think that, and you point out to them, okay, well, the reason that you have this revulsion against doing X is because in some evolutionary history, there was some survival advantage for you to have for this revulsion to be.
Maybe there was. I can't.
No, yeah, sure. Yeah, but let's say there was. Let's just say there was.
Okay, so there actually is.
Yeah, there was some survival. There was some fecundity benefit in their ancestry. So,
yes. Yeah. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Do you think presenting that to them would somehow diffuse the revulsion? Do you think that in other words, do you think presenting that fact would
no.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I say, when I opened the discussion way back when, I said that I think it's, this is why I don't generally argue with people about this, because I can respect the reason why they want to argue with me about it, because they see me as doing something, or they see other people, maybe not me, doing something that they feel like they need to stop. So it makes perfect sense why they would need to argue with me. But the reason that I don't feel the need to argue with them is because I do think humanity has a lot of variability there. So if someone has a visceral response to the idea of harming a particular animal, like the cow, I don't think they should be talked out of that. Like, that's not.
It's more about it's more, the point I'm getting at is not really that. The point I'm getting at is just, if we're asking the question of what most people would find morally abhorrent or morally wrong, I don't think it's going to be very, if that's what we're trying to seek, I don't think it's going to be very relevant to try to say, the reason that they find it is morally wrong is because of this mechanistic explanation. In the sense that I don't think that's going to change, even upon reflection, that that's the case, whether they find it morally wrong. I mean, for example, like I'm sure in my ancestry at some point, like people have, some of my ancestors have been raped, and that, and have raped, and that at some point was, had a fecundity advantage that probably had some survival advantage. Does that, in some way, in any way, change my moral attitudes toward whether I should rape someone or not?
Well, the opposite, in fact, right? Because the reason that I at least assume most of us has a very visceral response against that is specifically because there were a very small number of people who did use that as a survival advantage, and it wasn't better for our survival that they did that. And so there's kind of a hardwired, if you will, revulsion to it, because allowing it to persist and not creating structures to prevent it would have been very bad for us, right?
No, I understand, but I'm saying even if we can envision a scenario where it would be like, even if it was told to me, hey, listen, someone said, okay, I've dug into your history,
right,
and it turns out that you specifically, your ancestors were raped, and they raped. And it turns out that your ancestors were the ancestors that did get a fecundity advantage from their rape practices. It turns out that, it may be the case that most people have a revulsion against rape because it was not advantageous. However, we have discovered that in your ancestry, it was advantageous. Now, yet at the same time, you have a revulsion against rape. Does this information that your ancestors had a fecundity advantage for rape, do you think that's going to make them feel any more, that knowledge is going to make them feel any more favorable, have any more favorable attitudes towards rape?
I mean, obviously not. And I'm apologizing if I was suggesting that somehow this is an explanation for anything. What I was trying to say when I was talking about the fact that that is probably where the revulsion to kicking a baby comes from was just that if you want to know why someone wouldn't kick a baby, that may be why. Now, the reason that I say it's important to acknowledge that is because we also have to explain why some people do kick babies. So there has to be some random, thing that happens, because humans are random. And it doesn't really have to do necessarily with your particular ancestry, because, ancestry isn't completely deterministic. It's not like, oh, my grandfather was X, so I will be X. There's a lot of randomness to it. So,
by the way, we can just capture that by expanding the ancestry. I mean, to make it more and more probable that that's just
but
one.
so you shouldn't change your, particular way that you were born and have opinions about things just because someone told you that someone in their family tree did something differently. I don't even honestly understand the connection between those two. Maybe we can clarify that a little bit, or maybe ask the next question and we can come back to this one to figure out what it is you're actually asking me.
Well, the point I'm just trying to make here is that it seems like there's this move that's being made here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you try to offer this mechanistic explanation to in response to why people have certain revulsions. But I mean,
Okay.
we can just sign off on all of these mechanistic explanations. We can say, okay, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
But then if what is moral to an agent is just the attitudes that they have towards something, I'm not sure. I don't think for most people this explanation is going to matter to whether they have this attitude towards something. It's not going to turn on that. It's not going to change their attitude they have towards that.
Well, so I'm not really trying to change anyone's attitude, though, so I don't know what you mean by that.
Then what's the wait? But then no, but it's not that you're trying to change them. It's that it's almost like you're trying to. It almost seems like you're trying to offer an explanation as some sort of a deflation of the fact that most people find this horrific. In other words, when someone says like, oh, well, you just feel this way because you're culturally indoctrinated to feel the way, or you just feel this way because you were in this society and society put these values to you. Oh, you just feel this way because, and it's like that similar kind of thing. Oh, you just feel this way because you were evolutionarily favored to have these characteristics, right? It's almost like this type of diffuse, like it matter, like as if it would matter less to them.
I'm not. No, I wouldn't try to diffuse it. I'm not trying to suggest that it doesn't matter to the person or would matter less to the person about kicking a baby. I was just trying to say, like, well, that's presumably why we have those things, so that you can understand why someone who doesn't, because we all know that there are people who will kill a chicken, right? So the question is why? Why will they kill the chicken when we also know that many people in this chat, for example, wouldn't, in fact, would feel very strongly that the chicken should not be killed? Why? Why are two people having such a different response? And my assumption is because that is how those, evolutionarily somewhat random things ended up getting drawn. Not every person gets born with the same visceral reactions to different kinds of behaviors. And because some people are going to have like a strong reaction to this, they will be very upset about that. And maybe society can culture them to not have as severe a reaction, but they're going against their reaction. And other people will not have a reaction to that, but maybe society can culture them to still be unokay with it, right? So all I was trying to say by that was evolution seems to be kind of a little bit of a
you're offering a partial account, a partial explanation about why certain people have certain you're offering a partial explanation or a partial account about why people have
a potential explanation. It's just saying like maybe that's why, because we don't have a very good answer for why that is. There's no way we can really know why.
That's fine, as long as the explanation is not being used in a way to imply that upon realization of the explanation, there's some less of an importance to these very same people, even if they were to reflect on that.
No. I mean, because I think if you viscerally don't want to see a chicken killed, you don't. I mean, that viscerality is going to be there.
The point is, if they viscerally don't want to see a chicken killed, the explanation of why I don't viscerally want to see a chicken killed is not going to
exactly
motivate me in any way to see a chicken killed.
Exactly. You're not going to be like, oh, suddenly I realized I'm actually fine with it because somebody said something, right?
Yeah, because somebody offered the explanation as to why I'm not okay with it, and then now I'm okay with it.
Right. But similarly, you also have to then appreciate why someone who really doesn't have any visceral reaction to killing a chicken doesn't see that, right? They're like, no, I was fine with that. I kill chickens. I kill them all the time or something, right? And so there's a really big gap between those two people, right?
Yeah, I don't expect, like, in most cases when, people kill humans through whatever psychiatric condition they have, I imagine if you were to offer some kind of mechanistic account of their psychiatric condition, that's not going to, in most cases, motivate them to now all start getting all teary-eyed when when a serial killer commits murder. Now they're all sympathetic.
Well, and similarly, even if it was justified, that may be the case. So meaning someone takes another person's life in self-defense, and maybe we all agree that it was justified, that person may still have pretty significant mental impact from that, because just, again, there may be a very strong visceral repulsion to the idea of killing another human.
Yeah, justification does more though. I mean, that's a little bit different.
But I'm just saying there still might be residual there, meaning even if you justified something, it doesn't mean that the psychological effects of it don't potentially linger on the person if they were going to have a visceral emotional response to something.
Yeah, for sure.
It's there.
Sure. I do think justification is a little bit different. Yes, I agree with what you're saying. Justification is a little bit different than the point I was making, because that I do think that is something that generally resonates more emotionally with people. But I would more apt example there would be if someone were to kill someone in self-defense and they feel really bad about it. If you were to say, well, you have to understand, the reason you feel bad about this, even though you killed in self-defense, is just parasitic evolutionary characteristics.
From your not going to help.
Yeah, that's not going to help.
Not going to help. I mean, maybe it helps in that, talking through things is a thing that humans do, and maybe it makes them feel a little bit better. But like in general, the visceral psychological part of that is there, and really it's not. There's nothing you can do, right?
In fact, that's one of the I don't know how familiar you are in psychiatry. That's considered one of the immature coping mechanisms called intellectualization.
Right. I mean, you're trying to figure out a way to stop having that negative feeling or whatever, but it doesn't. It's there. What are you gonna do?
Okay. So I think we're in agreement. Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask, there was a point. So I don't know. I was at the gym, so I ended up dropping the call while you were talking with Isaac.
This has been a very long conversation.
Yeah, I understand. There was a point. It seemed like you were getting to an empirical disagreement about what most people would consider abhorrent when he framed. Yeah. So I don't understand why he didn't just say at one point. I mean, he did when he read it, but it seemed like what he was saying was, okay, well, if someone had the same mind as your mother, and everything else was equal, you would be okay with killing them. Most people find that abhorrent. Your response is, well, that's just presenting it context free. The context that I'm concerned with is adding in certain important elements, such as, well, we have to understand that in this condition, it's baked into the cake that there's going to be no potential or downstream harms for humans in any way.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I hear that, and like my immediate response would have just been, and I think you too, and Isaac did sign off on this. It's just the empirical disagreement is still there. So, in other words, if you were to present this to most people and say, "Hey, listen, by the way, here is the situation. Mother, same mind, except they're schmoomans and not humans. Okay to kill them, but we have to make it very clear in this situation, there's no potential downstream side effects for humans." I think if they're presented with that, I think most people would still, I have the intuition anyway, that most people still would find it abhorrent, even if that is very strongly specified.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, and I guess I would say that that's fine with me too, right? In other words, like, I'm pretty used to people not thinking that the way I think about the world is good, right? They're just like, no, you're very strange, and that's a problem or whatever. And that's fine, right? In other words, I don't quite have a problem with that. But I do think it matters, at least intellectually, to make it clear what's going on there. Because obviously, viscerally, right, I would bring that back to the baby kicking case. So I also wouldn't kick the baby, right? The reason I wouldn't kick the baby is because viscerally, I don't like the idea of kicking the baby, so it would never really occur to me. Similarly, it would never occur to me to do anything to harm these schmoomins. It just wouldn't be something that I would actually do, right? But that wasn't really the nature of the question. The nature of the question is participating in an economic system was, sort of what was assumed, where, you need to stop participating in this economic system because you are hoping that, or would you stop participating in this economic system because, presumably you feel like that somehow, I don't know.
I didn't take what Isaac was asking you to be participating in an economic system, by the way.
Well, because he said like at the outset it was you economically support. He said that many times throughout the thing. It was
like, sure. So if
meaning I'm not the person doing the killing.
I see. Buying the schmoomin meat versus buying the human meat.
But yeah, or not even the schmoomin meat. Like just literally, you voted for the candidate or something. I don't know, like whatever.
Well, I mean that's already even a different. But buying the schmoomin meat versus
buying the schmoomin meat.
Yeah, I think most people would be so. Just to put everything into the stipulation. So
yeah.
So mother is the same mind as the mother. Nothing else except for they're a schmoomin and not a human. You're not actually stabbing the mother. You are paying someone else to stab the mother for the mother schmoomin meat.
Right. Yes.
And we also stipulate that this behavior is not going to have any downstream negative effects to humans, or really more aptly, will have the same probability of having negative downstream effects as the cows we currently do this to in the real world.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think most people would, with all of that stipulated and with all of that made crystal clear, most people would find that abhorrent.
Well, so why are they okay with the cow situation then? You would argue maybe they don't know.
I can answer that. I think most people haven't really reflected on their values and reflected on this type of dialectic or similar dialectics. I think most people just go through their life not really introspecting on these things at all.
So what you're saying is basically they would be upset about my position, not realizing that it was also their position. Is that a way to say?
They're not realizing the similarity to their position.
Right. They're hypocritical, if you will.
No, it's not exactly hypocritical because it's a similarity to their position and it's not exactly their position.
Okay.
But yes, I think that most people go through their life not reflecting on their values, not doing these types of dialectics. And I think, most people are just normies. But
it seems to me like it's pretty easy to explain and just say, well, in the real world, though, I don't do that to humans, but I am okay doing that to a cow. And I don't feel like they would find that abhorrent, even if they saw what happened to the cow. So
yeah, well, they wouldn't. Well, what's there? To be clear, what I'm saying, I'm not saying what they would find abhorrent is what you would or wouldn't do in the real world. What they would find abhorrent is what you would or wouldn't do in the presented hypothetical. I think people care about having views. I think it bothers them to, on at least on some level, to have a view with those types of entailments in hypotheticals that don't exist in the real world, and some indications where that's the case is that you'll present to them this hypothetical, and then you can see the uncomfortability on their face even, and then they'll say things to make it go away. And one of the things they say to make it go away is like, well, that'll never happen in the real world, like as if that's somehow like just to push it aside. You can see how it bothers them, and they want to push it away by saying things like that. So I think that, so to be clear, I'm not saying that what they'll find abhorrent is how you will conduct yourself in the real world. What they would find abhorrent is having a position that commits them to these views in these hypothetical scenarios.
Well, yeah, and you can probably see why I part ways with them there. than based on what I've said.
Yeah, and then the other thing I just wanted, no, I agree, you have different values. I just wanted to be clear about what the seeming empirical disagreement that you were having with Isaac was, at least from my listening. Yeah. Okay. Good. So that's good that we have that cleared up. And then the other thing is, I just wanted to talk to you. Well, two other things. One is I wanted to talk to you about the value of the. It seemed like at some point in the conversation you were getting a little bit upset about the hypothetical being very specified and certain things, certain over contexts were being wandered away. Yeah. So that's
I can elaborate on that a little bit if you want. I don't know if that was because I can explain what I was trying to say there, if that helps.
Sure, go ahead.
So again, the reason that I think it matters, like the only reason I think that it matters to have a discussion like this at all, or to examine these things at all, is just so that you can understand how other people are going to act, and also so that you can create compromise, right? So that you can figure out ways in which groups of people who don't have the same, let's say, if we're saying it's evolutionarily, but who knows why, who don't have the same root goals, so that they can basically function together, right? So that someone like me can live in the same world as someone who doesn't have the same goals. And so it seems really disingenuous to me. I'm just trying to be honest. It seems very disingenuous to try and create a hypothetical situation where the goal is try to get it to sound like the other person is okay with a human Holocaust when they're not really. And I understand why you want to do that, because if you want to try and extend this to animals, which is the goal, right? You're trying to say, like, look, the animals are very similar to us. They're similar enough that you should have the same kinds of concerns that you have for a human as you do for another animal. It makes perfect sense why you're trying to do that, but it comes across as very disingenuous because the other person's like, no, like the way I do this moral reasoning is a different way. And so to me, it matters a lot what those specifics are. And you can't really remove those from the hypothetical because it doesn't give you a good picture of how this person would be a moral actor in your society. So you've removed the necessary information you know to whether or not you should feel comfortable with them or not, right? And that to me is very bad. And I really didn't like it because it did seem very disingenuous, and it's not something that I consider an actual honest discussion to do things like that. I wouldn't do it to somebody else, right?
Okay, so let's a number of things there.
But does that make sense? I mean, did that?
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. So you're saying that, okay, when you're given a hypothetical like that, yes, it is testing something. It is testing your views with those factors divorced from the situation, the factors you care about.
Yes.
And it may sound bad to a lot of people. However, that might give off an implication that you would start acting like that in the real world, where the other factors that you care about are present, and not stipulating that may give off that false implication or impression, and that's what you were upset about. Is that right?
I wouldn't necessarily say that I was too upset about that. I just meant that I think that it's not a complete representation of the point of view. So
okay,
I actually
thought was not a complete representation of your view.
Right. And so the only point I wanted to make there was that, because like I said, the way I think about things is always struck people as odd. So there is no universe in which they're going to go like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I think about it too, right? That's just simply not going to happen. Right off the bat, I could say that was not going to happen. In fact, in the chat beforehand, I basically said that. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to be like, what? When I actually say how I actually think about these things.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So I understand that the concern about the not wanting that implication to come across, and it can be easily resolved by simply saying, hey, by the way, just so you know, here's the answer to your hypothetical. divorced of the other things I care about. But just so you know, in reality, there's all these other pragmatic concerns that I would never act like. So
which is what I tried to do, and hopefully it was clear.
There's anyway. But I just want to be clear to you about the utility and the usefulness of doing these hypotheticals with those pragmatics divorced from the equation, because
that I am skeptical of. So yeah,
so that's what I want to talk about.
That, I would appreciate it.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. So there's certain information that your interlocutor was seeking in that conversation. And it wasn't just your complete view. It wasn't your complete view, in fact. What your interlocutor was doing there was they were trying to test what you've put on the table, what you've offered. So if you offer something to say, well, so for all individuals, so long as that they are not human, and it is also the case that they do not have any, this action does not threaten humans in any way, I am okay with it. What your interlocutor is doing is they're just presenting you with a potential counterexample. They're presenting you with, say, okay, well, if you say that, then here's a situation that I suspect you wouldn't be okay with that also meets the criteria that you've outlined. Are you okay with this or not? And then so what they're trying to do there, they're trying to get information out of you. The reason you're being asked that is not to just make you look bad. The reason you're being asked that is your interlocutor is trying to get some information from you. What they're trying to say is, what this person is saying sounds like most people don't really hold that view. Does he really hold that view? Let's test it out.
Oh, okay.
And
well, maybe, but if the person's intentions are genuine, they just want to find out what you think, they wouldn't then say, well, after they asked the question, if all they wanted was the information, they would not then say, well, most people would find that abhorrent, right? That's clearly
I'm not saying that's just what was trying to be done. I said that was part of what was trying to be done.
Okay.
Yeah. So what was part of what's trying to be done there is to get some information out of you. And the information is, and sometimes it's a better strategy to use this method of putting what you're saying to the test than to actually just ask, hey, is that what you really believe? You could do both ways. You could say, hey, is that what you really believe? Oh, it is? Okay, so what about this example that meets the criteria of what you've said, but clearly sounds really bad to a lot of people? Do you really believe that? And then when you respond to that by saying, oh, well, clearly I wouldn't be okay with that because it would have downstream effects toward humans. Well, that's just a move that's not giving your interlocutor the information they're trying to get from you in the first place. That's doing the opposite. That's trying to...
Well, it's because you suspect them, right? It's because you're now suspicious of their motives, because normally you would not require such a hypothetical, which, again, you and I disagree on. Like, it seems like you think that is a good way to get at information, but I don't actually think it is, because the information that you actually need is...
Wait. It's a good way, to be clear about my position. It's a good way, in some cases, it's a good way to test if... Because here's why I believe this. Look, I'll level with you. Because sometimes you get people saying, hey, for all X, Y. And I say, okay, well, what about this example? Do you really believe that? Now, there's two types of answers I typically get. I typically get, oh, yeah, because look, again, for all X, Y, and that's an X, so clearly it's a Y. The other type of answer I get is, well, that sounds pretty bad now that I think about it. Let me think about that for a second, and then they'll adjust their X, Y. And then the third type of answer I get is some kind of mental gymnastics or not answering the question or whatever. But I will tell you this. When I try the strategy of, hey, do you really believe that? You know what kind of answer I get? Always. Almost always.
Yeah.
Yes, I really believe that. Right? So it seems like a much better strategy. Instead of just saying, hey, do you really believe what you just said? A much better strategy is to try to find counterexamples, or to try to put what they've said to the test, and that at least in my experience, is a more productive way of, if you're dealing with an honest interlocutor, to get them to say, oh, I actually haven't really thought about that. Because just asking, do you really believe that, isn't going to get them to think about potential counterexamples in the way that giving them a counterexample would.
Well, I agree with that as long as they are real. I think that's the part that
What do you mean by real?
Something that they can actually understand as a tangible reality that they have experienced, right? So, in other words,
if they say for all x, y, this is talking about things, just to be clear, we're talking about things that exist in the real world in hypotheticals. That's a statement that subsumes x's and y's and x's.
But I'm not, right? In other words, I never made any statements like that because I specifically said I'm just talking about real things, right? I said that right at the outset. I was like, I only care about real things. I don't care about hypothetical things. So to the extent that something is going to be hypothetical, I need the actual real version, right?
Wait. Hold on.
Yeah.
Because you've when you say you only care about real things, what a hypothetical is just to take something that's not real and ask the question if it were real.
Well, no, that's not true. So for example, in like Supreme Court arguments all the time, for example, when you give a hypothetical, you give a real situation. You're like, here is the situation. It exists in the real world. These are real things that we're talking about. You know all the details.
Okay, what I mean by hypothetical, right? Yeah. So what I mean by a hypothetical, and my use of the word,
yes, I know,
is just to ask, if this were the case, then what? Or if this were the case, then some question.
Right.
Hypothetical is just to present a situation, and usually it's if ask the question if this were the case.
Yes, and
now if you're telling me that if you say I only care about real things, if I were to ask if this were real, would you care about it? You telling me you only care about real things is not. I don't see how that's going to turn on the answer to that question, because a hypothetical, on my use of the term, is just to ask if this were real.
Right, and what I'm saying is that isn't really possible when you want to think about things for the details. Because
wait, when you say that's not possible,
for me to consider that in the way that I normally think about things, I need all of the details that can be directly mapped back to an actual real scenario. So we could try to create.
Hold on. When you say it's not possible, are you just saying that if I ask if this were real, what do you think about this? Are you just saying that you just have a problem comprehending if statements involving if this were real? Or are you saying it's impossible on some sort of logical or physical modality?
I'm saying that usually, so in my experience, pretty much all the time, hypotheticals that create situations that don't currently ever exist, like the Schmoomans, for example, as opposed to a hypothetical which does actually exist. So the hypothetical I said of someone kicking a tree. We all know how to kick a tree, right? So there's no ambiguity about what that actually means. Hypotheticals about things that don't actually exist are missing too many details. It would take you hours to actually explain all of the things to create the real scenario with all of the stuff filled in that allows you to answer a question about Schmoomans. Now,
when you say allows you to answer a question about Schmoomans, do you just mean that
accurately? For me, to give an accurate answer about what I would do.
Do you think that the answer that you gave was an accurate answer about the Schmoomans?
I mean, to the best I could give for what the person was willing to tell me about the scenario.
Okay, so you can envision. So you don't have a problem conceptualizing hypotheticals that are not real.
Oh, certainly not. I just think the answer is largely meaningless.
No. Okay, well, that may be meaningless to you, but it was meaningful to the other person. And the reason because again, the reason you were asked this hypothetical is because there's certain information that your interlocutor found meaningful, whether you did or not is a different question, that they were trying to get out of you.
Yes, but I guess what I'm saying is, in the value judgment kind of way, I don't think that information that they got was actually the information they think that it is. Meaning, I believe they think they know something about that exchange, and I don't think it's correct. In the same
What
way,
do you think? Wait, what do you think that they think about that exchange that you? So do you think that they got some proposition about you that they think is true that you think is false?
I would say it a little bit differently than that, but that is the gist of it. Yes, meaning
What
they think that
proposition is
that
that?
answer provided a more complete picture than it actually did.
I don't think that was his. No, I don't think that was his goal. I don't think he was trying to get a complete picture from you. I think
Well, I
what he
think
was
he was
trying.
trying to get a particular.
I think he was trying to get a very non-complete a picture from you. I think he was just trying to get one piece of the puzzle, actually.
Right, and I think that that was a misleading piece in a way, like I said. And the reason for that, you can disagree with it all you want.
Wait, but wait,
I'm
wait,
just
wait,
saying
hold on,
that's
hold on. Wait. Whether it was misleading or not is a different question. Because again, like, because look how we got here. You said that in this method that was in the conversation that you had with this person,
yeah.
you told me that there was some information that he got from you that he thinks is true that was false. You said you might be saying that a different way, but for the most gist of it, that's right. That he got some information, some false information out of you that he thinks is
Yes.
true. When I asked you what that information was, you said something about a complete picture, which wasn't even what he has any view on at all. Like, he doesn't even trying to get that from you.
So to give an analogy of what I mean by that is,
Do you still think that's true, that he has a false, he got false information from you?
yes, I mean, well, or I'd say is extrapolated, perhaps might be the best way to say it.
What do you think? So, what do you think that he extrapolated? What do you think Isaac extrapolated from you and thinks is the case that is not the case about you?
So, if we are to assume that the answer to that hypothetical has value, meaning the yes or no answer,
To him?
To any at all, meaning if it has any, if there's any point to having it be answered, like if anyone can get anything out of it, right?
I think, yeah. So he cares about the answer that you give.
He cares about the answer I give, or I care about the answer I give, or someone listening does.
Okay.
We have to believe that there would be some way that we could use that answer for something, meaning we have to be able to think a thought about it. We have to be able to make another conclusion about it. We have to be able to do something. I'm not saying what we have to do. We have to do something, right?
At minimum, feel something about it, or he can just have a sense of well-being, like, oh, I got the answer I wanted.
Yeah,
I got this piece of review that I wanted. Now I'm happy.
Something. We got something out of it, right?
Yeah, there's some information. Yeah, there's some information he wanted from you, and that was his method of extracting that information out of you.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, do you think that the information? Do you think that the beliefs he has about you in his head from that are false?
Well, of course, I don't know what he believes in his head, right? So it's a little bit hard for me to answer.
But
likely that is likely to be the case.
So what do you think? What do you think he thinks is true about you that's false about you?
Well, like I said, it's very hard to know because I don't actually.
Well, then why are you claiming it?
Because I was trying to make a point about hypotheticals in general and why I don't think they have value, right? Like what I was trying to say
by saying that by giving this example in which he has false information, but then when you where you were pressed on that, you now are telling me you don't know if that's even true that he has false information.
No, I'm telling you it almost certainly is. I just can't tell you exactly what the falsehood is, right? If you tell me
why do you think he has false information?
Because I don't see how that answer can actually provide a useful picture for something.
Wait, whether it's useful, hold on. Whether it's useful,
an accurate, a good model. So let's put it this way, right? When someone's trying to interrogate you about your belief systems, what they're trying to do, I assume, is figure out what that belief system actually is.
One second, but you're going a little too fast. One moment. When I asked you just now, why do you think he has false information?
Yeah.
You told me because you can't see any use of the information that you provided him.
Yes, because I assume that the reason
why someone would ask that question is because it was false information.
Because there had to be a reason why you would ask the hypothetical. Like you wouldn't ask it just for, to not care about what the answer. So you must have some way in which you are going to use this answer to form some opinion about something. You have to have some action you're going to take on the answer because otherwise you wouldn't care what the answer was. You wouldn't bother to get it.
Yeah, maybe look, he could have all sorts of reasons for wanting to get some information out of you.
Yes,
that you may be very opaque to.
Mm-hmm.
But why? But what does that give why does that give you a reason to believe that the information you gave him was false?
Not
I mean,
false.
you're the one giving him the information, right?
No, I didn't say the information was false. I said what he may have taken the information to be could be false, right?
Okay, so why do you think he took? Why do you think that in your interaction, in your answering that question, you've resulted in him getting information about you that's false?
Because this is my statement in general about hypotheticals, because they remove the details, and the details are the only thing that allow the answer to actually make sense or to be meaningful. So if you remove the details, you get what is almost effectively
Wait, when you say meaningful, there's certain things that were meaningful to him, and they didn't include those details.
Well, like I said, it may be entirely possible.
And he said that, by the way.
It may be entirely possible that he actually literally doesn't have any additional sort of thoughts about that whatsoever, meaning he makes no extrapolation from that answer and takes it into account in no way other than just to literally know whether the answer was yes or no. But that is unlikely. I don't think someone would waste their time posing an entire hypothetical literally just to know what the answer was and never have another thought about it, right?
No, he's probably had other thoughts about it, but what he was seeking, the main piece of information that
it's those thoughts that I'm talking about, right?
Okay, sure. Look, people can form secondary or tertiary beliefs about the main thing they're seeking, sure.
That's right.
But sure. And those things can be true or false. So for example,
that's right.
You can think about, okay, well, most people would not like this thing, this view. That's an empirical question that could be true or false, but that's not the main thing he was trying to seek out. With respect to the main thing he was seeking out in that interaction, which really was just your answer to test if you were going to be consistent with what you said. Do you think, with respect to the main thing he was seeking there, you've given him beliefs about you that are false?
So if those beliefs are strictly confined to the idea that I do logically think through what I'm generally saying and that those are consistent, then no, I don't think he got any false information. But my sense from what he said after that was that he thought a lot of other things that actually don't have anything to do with that.
What did he say that makes you think he has false information about you?
Well, I mean, I'd have to go back to the actual text of the discussion to say specifically, but like I said,
broadly, generally,
like I said, the fact that it was followed up directly with sort of the value judgment about other people's value judgment about how that would sound, again, makes me very suspicious, right? It makes me suspicious of whether the only reason for that question, or the only, and I shouldn't say reason, but I should say maybe the only inferences being drawn from that is the only thing that was cared about is whether it was a logically consistent position, because it certainly sounds like there are more things that's important to the person because they're bringing up things that have nothing to do with logical consistency.
The secondary belief that was formed was that your position, even stipulating the added context, would be abhorrent to most people. He acknowledged, by the way, that's a suspicion that he has,
right?
And that he could be wrong about that. And by the way, I share that suspicion. I share the suspicion that if we were to poll people and say, "Hey, this is your mom in mind," it would be okay to, but your mom is a shmoom, but this shmoomin, it turns out it's a shmoomin and not really your mom. But we have to make very clear this won't have any negative downstream effects toward humans. It would the shmoomins, obviously. I don't think I share the suspicion, and again, I could be wrong too. It's just my suspicion, but I share the suspicion that that's true, not that that's false. So I'm not seeing any reason to believe that he's gotten. And again, he didn't overstate the confidence of that. That's just that's a credence that he's offering.
Well, let me try to paint the picture a different way and see if this makes any more sense to you, or maybe it won't.
And well, just to be clear, what am I looking? Just to make sure we're on the same page. What am I, when you're painting the picture? What are you painting for me? What am I looking for right now?
The reason why I thought it was necessary that things be discussed more completely with respect to the details.
No, that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm
Okay,
looking
then
for
maybe
is
we're done.
yeah.
Or...
So what I'm looking for is why you believe he has false information. He has false beliefs about you now, and what those are.
Well, like I said, because I'm not, I don't claim that he definitely does.
Well, why do you believe he does?
I was trying to say that the way that those hypotheticals work is I think that they are very likely to produce an incorrect extrapolation about who knows what kind of information someone is thinking
Wait,
about when they think
would?
about it, right?
Do you think that's true for him or just the audience?
Anyone. I think it doesn't have to be him or the audience. I think anyone.
Do you think it's true for both him and the audience, or do you think that? Well, let's just start with him.
Any person, him, the audience, anyone, and any.
So it's true.
Person.
So it's true for him. I don't. By the way, I don't think it's true for him because I know him, and I know the way he thinks.
Which is great. And by the way, like that's totally fine too. I mean, I don't worry about.
And here's what I'll acknowledge. I'll acknowledge that when someone says something like, "Yes, if my mother was a schmooman, I wouldn't have a problem stabbing her."
But that's not what he said.
If they omit,
that's not what he said. But okay.
Oh, wait, what?
They said there was some kind of other thing, a schmooman, that has the same.
Yeah, has the same
clone
mind
of your mother. Right?
Yeah.
It's not your mother.
Yeah, sure. It's not your mother. Okay. If there was
this is important, right? You know why it's important to me that that's a difference because you've heard what I've said, right?
Yeah. 1 second. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand why. Here's where I'm leveling with you. Here's where I'm going to come to some agreement with you. I understand that if you just say to an audience,
right, here
is a not my mother, but someone with an identical mind as my mother, and my mother's and this person that's not my mother is a schmooman,
right.
And I'm okay stabbing them. And there's other pragmatic concerns that you don't mention that that an audience may not or is not mentioned in that context, and the audience may form certain false beliefs about your position that you don't actually have. Namely, that some people might think that you're okay doing this in the real world with or without those things, there's certain things. So I acknowledge that. To be clear, I don't think Isaac had any of those views. I don't think Isaac formed any of those extrapolations.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I don't. It doesn't really matter to me deeply whether he does or doesn't. So that's
fine. It matters to what your claim is because you claim that he did.
No, I said that was my problem with the hypothetical. Is that
your problem? You gave an example about why you have problems with hypothetical, and one of the examples was with Isaac.
And everyone, meaning not just
okay.
Isaac.
So with respect to now we're adding everyone, but with respect to Isaac was what you first said. I'm just pointing out with Isaac, that's an example where that would just be false. Now,
okay. I mean that's great. If you can assure me that's great.
Yeah. Now I can grant that for an average audience that could be the case, but there's an easy way of dealing with that, though. The easy way of dealing with that is just to specify further. It's just say, okay, listen. There is an advantage. There is a utility of this very specified hypothetical to get the piece of the puzzle for someone who's looking to get the piece of the puzzle. However, after you answer the hypothetical, you just have to say, listen, I just need a little more time to just clarify for the audience because this is going to sound because I don't want to be taken out of context here. So I'm going to answer the hypothetical. I'm not going to dodge it.
That's what I did.
No, I get it. I understand. I'm just pointing out the utility. So this way you get to have the cake and eat it too. You can say, okay, I am going to give my interlocutor the information they're seeking. And that's by answering the hypothetical, not answering a different hypothetical. So you answer that hypothetical. And then you say, by the way, to the audience and everyone, I would only do this under this and this circumstance. In the real world, I wouldn't do that because I have other pragmatic concerns. But in a hypothetical where those are wanded away, then I would do it. That's the
true,
intellectually
right?
honest
answer. That's an accurate depiction of of the situation.
Yeah, but that's what. But the point is that doing that doesn't in any way undermine the utility of the specific hypothetical. It's just to say there's also utility in specifying things further.
But it does to me, right? Because you I understand why you and or Isaac, I guess is his name, or Isaac have assigned a utility to getting the answer to that hypothetical, right? You have to kind of appreciate
We're trying to test
doesn't.
what I would do. What I'd be doing is trying to test people's values. I mean, my exercise in doing
Right.
this is really to put things to the test. Where, because when people say things like that, the utility that I get from it is that, and the utility the other person gets from it is that sometimes they realize that that's not actually their values. They're like, wait a minute,
Right.
it's not what I just said. That actually doesn't capture my values, because when I am presented with this example, this specified example with the relevant pragmatics not obscuring the case, it's actually not that statement I made is actually not reflective of my values. So I need to go back and rethink things.
Yeah, and again, I just don't really agree with that. The reason
Wait, what do you
why
mean you don't agree with it? You think those things don't happen?
I think that they are happening in a way that is devoid of the details, which is where it would be valuable. I understand what you're saying.
Wait, but then wait. But that's not a disagreement then. That's just saying there's other things that can improve the utility on this even more in a different way. That's
yes,
fine.
and I'm saying that the way I wanted to talk about it was the better way.
Wait. No. It's not. It's not one or the other. It's not. There's. You could do both. Look.
Well, I don't have to do either, right? So
No.
Okay, I would like to talk about it is that way.
1 second, please. I'm saying that. Look, there's two things. One provides a given amount of utility, and then the other specification provides additional utility. It's not like you can only do one or the other. You could, I'm not saying you have to, but you could do both. The first approach provides the answer that your interlocutor is seeking, and it also gives you the opportunity to test your own values. The second one actually doesn't do that, but what it does do is it provides certain types of other forms of clarity to either an audience or to not give certain false impressions of that follow from the first. Notice how the second thing doesn't have certain advantages that the first one has.
And what I am saying is that although you and Isaac see the utility as you have described it, which I totally believe you do, I don't. Does that make sense?
It makes sense that you don't see it.
Yes.
But to me, I don't know. I don't understand why you wouldn't see it unless you didn't have the goals of putting your values to the test or reflecting on your values, or if you just think that for you that's not an effective way for you to reflect on your values. But in either case, regardless,
I can answer specifically why, though.
Sure.
The reason why is because once you have removed that many details, I don't believe that answer actually can be mapped back to the case with the details.
Wait, so it can be. Do you think it can't? Do you think it can't test the statement that you've made, like a quantifier statement that you make?
No, I think it's not representative of the model. So, for example, if my goal is to interrogate my own behavior or my own reasoning about my behavior or something like that.
That's not the wait. That's not the goal. The goal is to test the statement that you've made. So if you say all X's are Y's,
but why am I testing the statement, right? So if
someone has the goal to test the statement, I don't know why they're doing it. If someone look, I grant that if you don't have the goal of putting your statement to the test, you might not find the utility of it for sure. That's not
you cannot test something without a reason. You need to know what you're testing it for.
Someone might just have a brute reason to. Someone might just care about that, and it could be brute. What do you mean?
But I mean, testing it for what? Testing it for
they want to see, because they may have a suspicion. Whoever's cutting in, mute, please. Someone may have a suspicion. Like, look, I can give you an account. When I hear someone say all X's are Y's and it sounds like a very outlandish position, there's a suspicion I have that this person really hasn't thought all the scenarios through, and that might not truly reflect what they're saying. And that's a type of curiosity I have, and I want that curiosity satisfied.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's one reason I have to test a person's statement like that. And I think that's a more effective way of testing that than simply asking the person, hey, do you really believe that? Or something like that. Like,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And so that, and I also think it's going to be these specific examples in many cases will be more effective than saying, hey, let's just put all the details instead of like wanding away the pragmatics. No, because again, like if you say all x's are y's, I want to know the x's that are unpalatable, not adding on things to and making x and changing x to x prime that's more palatable, because x is included in all x's or y's.
So just one quick point of clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So what in this in that particular discussion was the all x's are y's statement that you're referring to?
Yeah, so for all cases that are non-human, where such action would not have any downstream consequences for humans, that you would be okay paying for their slaughter.
Right. Okay. So basically, what you're just trying to figure out is, did the person leave something out of this? Meaning, are they just kind of saying that because it's something that sounded good at the time, but they haven't actually thought about what that would entail or something? So we're trying to see whether or not we want to bother to talk about that statement at all, because maybe the person's just going to be like, oh, actually, I meant this other statement. That sort of thing?
Yeah, that's exactly. What I'm trying to see is if what they've just said, if that statement they've just said is actually what they believe. And
yeah, so I mean,
is that actually accurately reflective of their values?
So I can understand why someone would want to know that, certainly, or to run that exercise, right? But you can also perhaps see why that's something that I wouldn't have spent my time on. Meaning, if someone told me that the main thing that we were going to spend the past 4 hours doing was determining whether I really meant what I said, I would have been like, no, don't bother, because I'm just not interested in that. Whereas if someone says, we do want to talk about the actual practical implications of this, like what actually is going to happen in the real world, and how are you actually going to make these decisions? That is something I would talk about, right? So does that help you understand why I'm saying it does matter to me? Because I wouldn't have bothered with this.
It helps me understand. So it helps me understand why. I mean, just by the way, it's not the only reason someone could have, like, a satisfaction of a curiosity of someone really meaning what they said. Someone could just say, like, after we put it to the test, also, like, what kind of implications does that have? Let's explore what follows from that by giving these cases. And giving these cases is a good way of exploring what follows from that, because in fact, doing both, because they can say, oh yeah, you actually are signing off on that. So now I know both the answers. Now I know you really do believe. I have more reason to believe you really do believe the things you're saying. And here is something you're signing off that follows from it.
Yeah. So, and I think we don't even really need, like, this is why I say, like, I don't really, it doesn't seem that productive to me, because actually, I can give a better hypothetical that makes my opinion sound bad to people, that exists in the real world, roughly. Meaning that you don't.
Wait. There might be whether there's a more optimal way of doing this is different. Is a different.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I'm happy to do that.
Wait. This was productive in the sense that the person, your interlocutor's goal was met. They've gotten the information they wanted from you.
But was my goal met, right?
Because I don't know. You may have completely different goals.
And that's why I'm saying that I didn't like it, because I'm supposed to be getting something out of this conversation too, not just you or not just him, right? And so the fact that that was not something that anyone appeared to care about doesn't feel good, right? It's like, oh, this person doesn't really care about sort of having this discussion in a way that I want to have it. They only want to have it in the way that they wanted to have it for their goals. And can you understand why I think that's not, at least not optimal, not great from my perspective?
Well, sure. If your goal is not to provide the information that your interlocutor was seeking from you, but rather to do something else, then I can understand why you would not find such a conversation enjoyable. But then that's just a matter of clearing up what the purpose of the conversation is in the beginning.
I mean, that would have been nice, obviously, but that didn't happen. So
yeah, I wasn't there for that part. But anyway, he's Isaac saying he did do that. So I wasn't there to. I mean, I trust him, but I wasn't there to see what that happened. But the point,
again, I don't object, just to be clear, like, don't object to it. Like, I just, in terms of whether that was, something that I think was the best use of time, it wasn't. But if
it depends on what your goal is. If it wasn't the best use of time for you because you had different goals, it was the use of time for him if he had the goals of
That's right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm
yeah, yeah,
assuming it was the best use of his time because he was the one who
yeah.
made the hypothetical, right?
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, and so the only point I'm making is that I think that um, I think that interaction, I think that dialectic was a useful way of him getting certain information from you that he was seeking. And I don't think he got false information from you in the process. I think the main things he was seeking from you were true answers.
Well,
And
that's
I think
good.
the beliefs that he formed from it were true beliefs about you.
Well, that's a good. I mean, that's reassuring if that's true.
Yeah. And that's the utility of these types of hypotheticals, is to really is to well, I mean, one of the yeah, I mean, I'll just be repeating myself. It allows people to reflect on the things that they're saying in a way that they haven't considered before. If you were to just ask them, "Hey, what are your values, or what are your beliefs, or what do you think?" Yeah, that it's
Yeah.
another approach that attacks that tries to pry at a different angle and can make people reflect in ways that they wouldn't reflect before.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think about these things a lot, obviously, because in general, I feel like there are a lot of things that are difficult to form good decision making on because, you know, there's just not a lot of immediate feedback you can get from, making a particular decision. So it is something that I tend to think a lot about, and I tend to not actually substitute some more convenient belief when I decide that, something's unpalatable, something. I'm usually like, no, all right, this is how I actually said I was going to do it, and I don't find that like I'm going to change my mind about something simply because it may be more convenient for me at the time or more palatable for me at the time. If this is how I'm comfortable making these decisions, then you have to be willing to do it, including if that means sacrificing something, right? Including if that means that the outcome is more negative for you, or perhaps quite bad for you, right? Which from time to time humans are called upon to do. Um, and I think that's okay, right? I am comfortable with it. I mean, I'm sure when the time came, it would be hard for me still to make a decision where I thought that, say, humanity was best served if I did something that was very detrimental to me. But I try pretty hard to do that. Like, I try pretty hard to actually keep those things in mind. And when I can find a clear way to do it, that's what I try to do. But
There's one thing I can say is when you're met next with a hypothetical that is you find to be non-real world or unrealistic,
yeah,
ask yourself and and think about the situation with your interlocutor and ask, what is this person, when asking me this hypothetical, what information are they trying to get from me? Are they trying to test something I've said? Are they trying to see if I really believe the things I said? Are they trying to find some entailment? What's the information they're trying to get from me? And then it might be clear if the answer that you're giving, this might be one way of clearing up, if the answer you're giving is helping them get the information they need, is actually answering the hypothetical, or if the answer that you're giving is not conducive to giving them the information you're giving. And again, to be clear, after you've done this, you can always add in additional caveats and stipulations once you've done that. My strategy, and with this, when someone asks me a hypothetical, my approach is generally just to do the following: answer the hypothetical. The first thing I do is answer the hypothetical to the best of my ability. If there's certain things that are unclear about it, say, well, it depends. There needs to be more. So there's more. If more information would turn my decision, and here's what it would be: if this, then that, then that, and if the other thing, then the other thing. And by the way, just so you know, I have certain caveats and stipulations about the real world, just so for people to understand that I'm not a psychopath or whatever.
I mean, I thought I did that, but I guess I didn't. So I guess what I would say is that was how I was trying to answer those hypotheticals. I was trying to say, like, okay, so that's why I often said, if you can guarantee that there's no, negative consequence to humanity, and you can guarantee that they are not humans, and blah blah blah, then I can give you this answer. But if you can't, then my answer is going to, of course, be no, because, you know, I can't answer yes to something that would endanger humanity, right?
Yeah, and and Isaac making a good point here. So you need to differentiate between asking arbitrary. Yeah. So again, like you can always ask for additional information from a hypothetical. The question is that information going to not all information needs to be asked from the hypothetical. The conditions for when new information needs to be asked is the following. Number one, if you don't understand the hypothetical without certain additional information provided, that's one.
Right.
Because then presumably you can't answer something you don't understand. You're not going to answer, or at least you're not going to. It's going to be hard to imagine you answering a question you don't understand. So that's one. Another one is if there's ambiguity in the hypothetical such that there's two different answers you would give, and depending on what additional information is in that hypothetical, you would give one answer versus another. So that's
right, which is sort of what I was trying to do about the humanity clarification part,
right? I understand, but yeah. So just to sum it up, these hypotheticals are useful. They do have a case use. They not giving additional information or context. I know, Isaac. He eventually, I'm not saying the interaction that took place. He operated like I think everyone. We saw what happened. Anyway, my points are these hypotheticals absolutely have case uses. They are useful. It is also true that not specifying additional information can be detrimental. That in no way undermines the utility of these hypotheticals and their case use. It just means that it should be sometimes paired with additional information after they're answered. That's all.
I mean, maybe, but again, like that's your opinion about the utility of these things, and I guess what I'm saying is I don't really agree with that. I am okay with it.
What's your goal? It's just to be clear. If one's goal is to provide the interlocutor with the information they're seeking, then yes.
But it seemed like my answer was a pretty complete answer, which was that here is, so just to give a specific on that one, I was like, well, in this particular case, I don't think I could create the social structure that, would actually guarantee this. So no, I thought that was very clear, because if you wanted to, say, well, hypothetically, let's suppose you magically had the ability to do that, then obviously my answer is yes, right? Like I literally baked that into the question.
So that's not clear to me or him, and I'll tell you why.
Well, I apologize for that because I was trying to be clear.
I understand why you think that was a clear answer. I understand why you think the more complete hypothetical there, where you added those things in, is the answer that subsumes both the answer in that case and it gives someone an obvious reason to believe what the answer would be in the other case. But I'll tell you why that wasn't.
I thought that would be self-explanatory. But I guess the answer
I understand why you think that's self-explanatory. It's not, though, and I'll tell you why. Okay. In our experience, when we deal with cases like this with many, many different people, it's really unpredictable. So when someone gives the answer that you gave, for example, if I took 100 different people and I
so you were worried that I wouldn't actually give the same answer.
Yes.
I see. Okay, that I did not understand. So because obviously because I'm the one giving the answer, assume that
you know what you're going to give,
right?
We don't.
I can appreciate that, but again, I'll say this again. It wasn't a very pleasant interaction for various reasons, and I think that colors it a little bit, right? I do not mind answering these kinds of questions, and I do appreciate that I have idiosyncratic worldviews, so I don't really expect people to ascribe to them. But I think there are nicer ways to do it too, right? There are ways to make people feel more comfortable. For example, you actually just succeeded in doing it with what you just did. You were like, look, okay, yeah, I get why you thought that was a complete answer, but here's the problem for me. I'm afraid that if I just assume what your answer is to the case where I wave these away, that actually you wouldn't say that if we did. So can we just say that? Can we say, like, let's suppose, can you help me construct what it would have taken for you to say yes, just so I make sure that you really are saying that, and not that you would change your mind, let's say, if we actually go there. You could just say that, right? And then the person's like, oh, okay, I understand. I didn't understand what you thought the problem was. Me, I just feels like you're not understanding what I'm saying because I'm being perfectly clear in my mind, and I just don't understand what the disconnect is. But now that you say the reason is because you think I'll change my mind, now I get it, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. Let me just say a couple things. I don't think if the interaction was unpleasant, I don't think it's a product of Isaac not being nice. I think Isaac was very nice in that conversation to the point where I actually thought he was high.
Nice. Sorry, I
Yeah,
shouldn't have said nice. I should say
yeah. I thought he
maybe
was on weed.
maybe explanatory to the person, trying to explain to them
Yeah, I did think.
why you were
I
saying
did
what you were
think.
saying, so that they don't interpret it as being some kind of
Mhm.
a tactic, and rather just an honest attempt to say, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm afraid you might. I just want to make sure that you're really okay with this." And so I'm afraid that that if I just assume that your answer would be yes in this case, that's not actually how you would answer. So can you actually figure out what
No.
you know?
Look. I understand that what I think was causing the discomfort. I
Yeah,
noticed that at certain points in the conversation, there was a lack of understanding between you two that I
yeah.
was picking, and it frustrated me too because I was like, and that's why I interjected it sometimes.
Right. You're
To
just like,
clear
I
things
think
up
I
because
understand what's going on here, and you
yeah,
guys don't.
exactly. And there were multiple points in the conversation. Actually, I only interjected with one, but there were multiple points. I was like, wait a minute, I understand what he's saying. I understand what
Yeah,
they're not getting each other for some reason.
yeah, yeah,
So that's what I think was causing the unpleasantness. I don't think it's because Isaac wasn't nice at all. I think he was very, very nice.
yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't have said
Yeah,
nice, but
sure.
the way that it's perceived by the other person, right, is that like, why is this person doesn't seem to be okay with my answer that I thought said the thing, right?
Yeah,
And an
but with
explanation of
this
why is helpful,
explanation,
right?
like no, you understand now, given the explanation that I've given.
Yes.
Okay,
If you thought that I was going to give a different answer,
or unsure if you were going to give.
could have
Yeah,
possibly given a different answer, then
yeah,
yeah, certainly, yeah,
yeah, because it's an answer to a different question, and
that's
if
right.
it's an answer to exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, glad we cleared that up. Now, some people were saying things about health. Like, is there any disagree? I was just wondering if, and we don't have to have this conversation now. I understand it's getting late, but I don't know because I wasn't here for that. Were there any like health claims made at
I
any
don't think
point?
so.
Okay.
There was no actual discussion of um, well, I guess people who ask questions afterwards, we talked about the fact that um, data about how maybe, let's say, not eating a steak, right, was an example. Data about how this could have a positive effect on humanity's survival because of things that have nothing to do with the morality of the animal part, but
Mhm.
rather the consequences to, say, the food chain, let's say, or the food
Oh, you
supply.
mean environment or health? So you're talking environment now.
Environment. So that was discussed, and so that got talked about. But health
Okay.
benefits, meaning people who are themselves benefiting from eating something different, no.
Okay. Cool. All right. So then I think I cleared up the things I wanted to clear up that were frustrating me, and I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it clarifies why I think that was such a sticking point, because I wasn't really sure about it. I was like, I didn't really see why this was confusing, but I guess that doesn't, like, now that I understand why you needed that specific thing so much, it wasn't really because you couldn't have guessed my answer. It's because you thought my answer might change. That helps. It helps make sense of that interaction, which previously I was like, what are you talking about?
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I'm glad. Glad I can help. And yeah. All right. That's all I have for now. Unless anyone else has anything that they want from me. If
I
not,
think I should probably sign off now. This has been 5
Post
hours.
physique.
So
all right. Well, have a good night, everyone.
take it easy.
All right. Bye.